this is Kat, and today I'm actually going to take y'all to Casemate Museum, which is a free museum out here, and it's over on Fort Monroe, which we went to for the fireworks show, so I hope y'all enjoy it. Jefferson Davis was imprisoned here. This used to be a prison, and it's also haunted with a lot of history behind it too. They put a sign up. They used to not have that sign there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm also going to read.
Recording it?
Yeah. That's a cannon. Let's see what the sign says.
Should call it a 3-inch ordnance rifle.
It's a 3-inch ordnance rifle, model 1861.
Don't read the sign.
Field gun made in, I can't read that year. James, I can't read that year. Field gun made in what year?
1863.
1863 for Union forces by Phoenix Iron Company, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. I'm not gonna read all of that one. That one's a boring sign.
No, it's not boring. It's take a while to read it all.
Another sign. Fort Monroe, Freedom's Fortress. Fort Monroe is the largest stone fortification ever built in the United States. Construction began in 1819 and continued for 15 years. Second Lieutenant Robert E. Lee served as an engineer at Fort Monroe from 1831 to 1834. During the Civil War, Fort Monroe played an important strategic role for the Union because of its proximity to the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay and the James and York rivers. The fort also sits on the southern tip of the James York Peninsula, a strategic route to Richmond. The North Atlantic blockading squadron used the fort as a base in several amphibious expeditions. You know what? I have a better idea. I'm just going to take pictures of the signs and include video. They're open 10:30 to 4:30.
Yeah.
Show them in here.
Yep. You gotta show this part.
This is Creepy Cave. No, I don't think, have I ever?
These would be where some of the gun ports were for the fort. Right here, there'd be cannon pointing out.
This wasn't like this last time. So this would have been like their gun ports, their
Storage area.
I would go out and get a view of the moat, but I got that planned for another video. Can't show them all one and the same one. Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's a lifesaver right there.
Alright, now we are inside Fort Monroe. This talks about the people of Point Comfort. Fort Monroe Casemate Museum, it used to be Old Point Comfort. Or Fort Monroe used to be Old Point Comfort. You want to read the sign? That's a lot to read. So, this is for, I don't know how to pronounce that, Algernon, what it looked like. And constructed in 1609, Fort Algernon was the first fortification of Old Point Comfort, named in honor of William de Piercy, the first Lord Algernon. The simple earthwork was designed to prevent the passage of hostile ships up the James River.
First, the natives living in this area were the Algonquin tribe.
Yeah, it was just
Joining the Religious Confederation with Chief Paladin.
Chief Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
That was Pocahontas' dad, if I remember right.
Okay, I don't think they want to stare at the road.
I was reading the sign. little outfit for a castle. Who's this? That would be Captain John Smith. That's alright.
This is a reproduction
Oh, yeah,
copy.
the first slaves that came to America came in here also. The first slaves that came to
This is
America
Demi
came here
Coleman.
also.
Demi
Culver.
Coverin.
The first slave ship.
There's another sign over there that talks about Fort George. The original English colonists brought with them the weapons and arts of war current in Europe at the time. Mannequins. Please no further.
Caution, all archways.
The archways here are really low.
They were only 5'8".
Please. Swords. First offense, the War of 1812 and the rise of coastal fortifications. Okay. Weapons of war, that would be this. This is a British siege.
mortar.
Yeah.
It's an 8-inch gun.
A British siege mortar. Show the side of it too.
There's a picture of
The burning of Washington. It's a picture of the burning of Washington. Or painting, sorry.
French soldiers. There's General Simon Bernard.
A bust of Brigadier General Simon Bernard, he said.
This is right there.
I was making sure I pronounced it right. Alright. That's the French soldiers. Or what they look like, war. Guns. The citizen soldier, the role of the militia.
This is a replica of what the militia looked like. As you see, the French soldiers in charge of the cannon. You got the guy loading the rounds in the front of the cannon. The big pole is a ramrod that would shove them, make sure the cannonball got all the way down to the bottom of the barrel. And then they would push it up into the, they would roll it up into the window to fire it. And when it fired, it would come all the way back here. They would reload it, push it back up, and fire it again.
You're good at this. I think I'm gonna have you do all the talking.
No.
I think they can hear you though. This is the other side of the.
Show you all the devices that they used for the cannon.
Yeah, it's all the devices.
There's the
British operations in the Chesapeake.
February 13th British on Chesapeake Bay. Here's another look at Fort Monroe. This is Fort Monroe in 1840.
So, this is what Fort Monroe looked like in 1840 in case you didn't hear my husband. Yeah, that's right. This explains what forts were meant for, right? Or what
This
the
is
forts.
forts of the third system.
Okay. This is
This is Fort Hamilton, Fort Sumter, and Fort Pulaski.
Pulaski. Why does that name sound familiar? This is a painting of Fort Monroe in
It's actually a print, bird's eye view of Fort Monroe.
Okay, a print of Fort Monroe in 1861. It's a bird's eye view. Here's the anatomy of a fort. Talks about the parapet,
Which is the most important part of the rampart.
the bastions. They were key elements in a fort's defense. The banquet, the
Small
scarp,
bank of earth that served as a firing step for the infantry.
scarp,
Ditch, counter scarp,
Terraplan?
Terraplan,
Covered way.
Lag, Lacey, Casemate, Water Battery, and Outworks.
This here talks about the creation of Fort Monroe from 1817 to 1834. So that means it took how long to create this?
1817 to 1834.
Yeah,
And it took 17 years.
it took 17 years to create this. Show you what's above here. No idea what those things are, but they are really long. Artillery. What are they?
This one clears the bore. If there's an obstruction in the bore of the cannon, they'll take this one with the. I showed the sequence.
Oh, I already showed them.
Alright, this one would clear out the bore if anything got in the way of the cannonballs.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, with the puffy end, is the ramrod that would pack the cannonball down to the bottom.
Ah. Military engineers. You have
Charles Gradio, Andrew Talcott,
Rene Edward DeRussy and Robert T. Lee. We even have a school out here named after him. I'm also going to show him that side too.
carronade, naval weapons, but they were also used by the Army at various seacoast fortifications.
So that's a carronade.
This is equivalent to 24-pound foam howitzer.
Okay. Let's down here real quick. Watch your head and your step. So these are. That's
This
a.
is the 32-pound solid shot.
Okay. So
It would have been used for the guns in these two casemates.
sabots. This is a sabot then.
Ensure that a fuse faced outward. So if it had a fuse, it would go on here to make sure that it faced outward.
Okay. This is a side view of the militia. 32-pounder Seacoast gun service of the peace.
The guy holding the box was holding the cannonballs.
Partnership at work, preserving our largest artifact. Talks about the goals, the actions, and the results of.
You have a crack monitor, a water diverter, and a brick fallout catcher.
Here it talks about elements of the arch.
The hidden strength of the fort. It's a massive structure of stone and brick.
There's a TV here that explains Fort Monroe and all that wonderful stuff. It's actually a very boring program. This here, it talks about the 477th Bombardment Group.
477 Airman Group, Tuskegee Airmen, World War II.
Tuskegee Airmen.
Tuskegee.
Tuskegee Airmen. World War II. That's when African Americans earned the right to fly and fight, right?
Yes.
That's what this is talking about.
Yes.
I think this is new.
This wooden stockade was manned by about 50 personnel, with a battery of 7 artillery pieces. The installation accidentally burned to the ground in 16 12.
Basically goes along the lines of the
20 years later, a smaller structure was erected at this location. Garrisoned by only 8 men,
The Red Wings,
its principal responsibility
or the Red
consisted
Tails.
of collecting duties
Okay.
on immigrants and trading vessels sailing into the James River. These funds were to be used to maintain the fort, but gradually the stockade fell into disrepair. It was destroyed by an ocean storm in 1667.
Since the completion of this film, many changes have taken place at Fort Monroe.
Until 60 years later.
In 2011, the U.S.
1727,
Army
the Virginia colony
deactivated the base, moving the
named
trade
in honor of the British
quarters
monarch,
to
King
Fort
George
Eustis and Newport News.
This structure was thought to be impermanent.
Soon after, land was returned to the Commonwealth of Virginia. On November 1st, 2011, President Barack Obama proclaimed Fort Monroe a national monument in recognition of the cultural, natural, and historical significance found here. Fort Monroe is jointly operated by the Fort Monroe Authority, the National Park Service, and the U.S. Army. I did not know that. You are now entering the casemate, which was used as a lodge room by Army and Navy Lodge number 306. I'm having a hard time reading all of that, so. Armed intervention. Fort Monroe and the Indian Wars.
Prior to Civil War, friction between settlers and Indian tribes in the South and Midwest led to many armed conflicts that required intervention by U.S. Army troops. Fort Monroe provided a number of these units, as this map indicates. Buffalo, New York, and Great Lakes, Fort Mitchell, Alabama, Fort King,
Hi.
Brevet Lieutenant Colonel Ichabod Crane, First Lieutenant Joseph E. Johnston, and Brevet Brigadier General Walker C. Armiston.
Here, this object's been temporarily removed, but it would be the pipe bowl
Early
from
19th century pipe bowl that
known as a calumet to Native Americans. This pipe bowl was handcrafted from a reddish brown stone called catlinite. Have you ever heard of that? Maybe your grandparents have, or your granddad. And painted with bands of silver. It would have been attached to a long stem made either from wood, stone, horn, antler, or bone. A grooved core forms a channel allowing the smoke to flow through. It was presented to the Casemate Museum in 1965 by Jefferson Hayes Davis. Is that the same guy that was the president? Thought so. This here talks about
the imprisonment of Chief Black Hawk in 1832 brought an end to the Black Hawk War. His capture in August put him in contact with the young Lieutenant Jefferson Davis, who escorted Black Hawk to Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis, Missouri. Talks about while in custody on board the steamer in Galena, Illinois. This shows a portrait of Black Hawk on the left, Lieutenant Jefferson Davis on the right.
if he seems to have done all that good, why? Okay, that's a torn up cannon.
This is so you can see what the inside of the barrel is.
Ah, a giant.
This gun was found buried muzzle up about 6 inches from the ground along Fenwick Road here in Fort Monroe. No record exists to indicate why this particular gun was buried in this manner.
So this gun was found buried.
Yep.
Domestic divas, the feminine side of Fort Monroe. This here is Mary Custis Lee. She was married to Robert E. Lee. Mary Walbach. During Fort.
We don't know why it was buried like that, so. Okay, here, sterling silver calling card tray.
So this here is a
The
sterling
engraving
silver.
depicts the main Sally Port entrance to Fort Monroe. The tray would have been placed outside a home's front door to collect the cards of those who came to visit while the owner and his family were out. the tray was either used by a family on post or was brought as a memento and used by a family who once lived or visited Fort Monroe. Below the tray is handwritten calling card of Varina June Davis, wife of President Jefferson Davis.
She was the one that was right next on
Souvenir postcards of Fort Monroe from the early 1900s. Top postcard is postmarked April of 1902. Depicts civilians, mostly women, watching soldiers practice on the parade field. Written on the postcard is, "Grace, of course, is crazy over the soldiers. Catherine also likes to watch them, Marmy."
The bottom postcard is a picture of the main sally ports of Fort Monroe in the early 1900s with the couple standing outside the entrance.
Object was removed for conservation.
Picture
The
fragment.
top part is a picture fragment, circa 1820, an example of mocha ware decorated in a earthworm design.
And
Teacup fragments, circa 1840, part of a set decorated in a transfer print called the Woodman, design named after the central figure in the print. Found on Fort Monroe during an archaeological dig in 1999.
this would be Edgar Allan Poe, wouldn't it?
Yes, this would be Edgar Allan Poe, Soldier Conflict.
I forgot he was in the military and stationed here.
On May 26, 1827, he enlisted in the United States Army. During his stay at Fort Monroe, Poe wrote several letters home to his foster parent, John Allen. Right before he departed West Point, he capitalized on the support of his fellow cadets. A number of them paid 75 cents for subscriptions to a book of poems.
The first two trains.
Their interest points in New York culture came on the list to print these books. Poems by Edgar Allan Poe, second edition. Poe dedicated the book to the U.S. Corps of Cadets.
First to train.
Military school practice. Did you miss what I just told you?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
I don't know.
This plaque continues to discuss the 3 slaves belonging to Colonel Charles Mallory of Hampton, Virginia, who escaped to Fort Monroe. Mallory's emissary, Major John B. Carey, demanded that the runaways be returned in accordance with the Fugitive Slave Act. On May 27, Butler replied that because Virginia now claimed to be a foreign country, that law no longer applied.
I don't know what I missed and what I didn't, but we'll find
I
out.
hope we miss all of that.
Yeah.
This is
I only just realized it wasn't recording.
this is Benjamin Franklin Butler. In the top left corner.
This is Benjamin Franklin Butler. This sign talks about his life, his career.
No, he was enlisted and contributed.
The general officer's mess chest.
This is everything that an officer had
Alright.
during the Civil War.
Either way,
This was
well,
Battle of Big
Battle of
Bethel.
Big Bethel. Alright. If we did miss any of it, I plan on coming back out here anyway. So. The Battle of Iron, the duel that changed the world.
This was a duel between the 2 ships.
On May 9th, 1862, 2 ships of iron faced off against each other in the confined waters of Hampton Roads. In one day, the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia changed naval history, calling for the end of unarmored wooden ships and the beginning of the ironclad era. The battle itself was a draw, although both sides claimed victory. The USS Monitor was successful in stopping the Confederate ironclad from destroying the Federal fleet, whereas the CSS Virginia blocked off the James River, closing off the approach to the Union ships. The clash of these two ironclads had a very significant impact on Fort Monroe. Not only did it render every wooden ship obsolete, it also made it easier for ironclad ships to engage coastal fortifications such as Fort Monroe. Smooth-bore artillery that fired cannons lacked the muzzle velocity and penetrating power to damage ironclad ships. The battle in Hampton Roads signaled the need to develop better armament, improved ordnance, and stronger fortifications. These are the Hartford passing the Hygeia, which is formerly the Chamberlain.
1862.
Yeah. Wow. Chamberlain's been around that long.
USS Sabine, the ship of the Atlantic Blockading Squadron, photographed off Fort Monroe in December 1864.
And this is
showing a map of
the map of Fort Monroe, Fort Wool. Yeah. See what I mean? There's only one way to get to Fort Wool. That's that little patch of land out there. This is all
New York Times from 1861. Seeing the front page story about the reinforcement of Fort Monroe. Colonel Abner Packard, commanding officer of the 4th Massachusetts Infantry. Inspection of the 5th New York Infantry. Soldier's account book. This daybook was kept by Fort Monroe sutler John S. Moody from 28th April to 28th August 1861. In it, he kept the accounts of soldiers who patronized his store, listing them by name, company, and regiment.
Well, I went that way.
Rodman guns.
Look at how cool that is, with the bubble up in the middle.
Oh my God, that
awesome.
that is cool.
We collect old bottles, and I don't have one like that.
Old wine bottle from the moat.
Yeah.
Wine bottle.
Yep.
I wonder how they found all this stuff. Like, did they actually go swimming and digging for everything?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When they closed this fort, they had to go through here with ground detection and look for, because this used to be used for target practice. Basically, they trained
They had to find
artillery people down here.
So they had to find
So
all
they
the
had to
spent
look
ordnance and stuff.
for old ordnance that hadn't exploded, mines in the moats and in the water. Out.
Sounds like out in San Diego, because they told us out there we had to be careful where we walked because there's still
Active mines.
active
Yeah.
mines and bombs and stuff. out
I
there.
was stationed in Norfolk in the late 80s and early 90s and dated somebody over here. And this was a very loud place to come to because they were constantly firing.
Even
Oh, so it's
even
kinda
before they
like,
even before they closed it down as a base, it was probably the most civilian oriented because all I'd have to do, I didn't even need someone with military to get me on.
Yeah,
I could just
well-
walk up and say, I want to go to Casemate Museum. I'm into paranormal.
Okay.
I'm into
I know all of the bases
Into history.
before the World Trade Center.
they
All you had to do was sign in at the gates.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
But-
here you still could, but they started doing day passes
Yeah.
and documenting,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, and
that
I'm
this
sure
person with this license
initially-
plate was on base on this day.
Yeah, I'm sure initially for the first few years that like Norfolk could probably still get on with a day pass, but at some point since then, probably once we officially went to war,
Yeah,
is
they
when
took
they
away that.
probably took away all of that. Because I
Yeah,
was
they
really trying to.
they cracked down
Yeah.
here, but they would still allow you only probably because it's one of the hugest historical
Historical,
and
yeah.
not just historical, paranormal
Yeah.
Was-
area out here. So
Was the
all you had to
training
do
down
is tell me
here
you were
as
into
long
one
as
or the
that
other, and they'd
Army
let
base
you
up
on.
in Yorktown? I can't think of the name of the base right now.
What is it you're talking about?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
I
how
think
far out
I
it is.
know the one you're talking about, and I can't think of the name of the base either. That's not
I don't-
McHenry, is it?
That actually might be it. Henry's.
On any given day, they're probably about equal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know
Probably
they
about
do.
equal.
I know they do a lot of like the planes go and do a lot of missile testing up there. Target
Well, we
practice.
used to, one of our ships that I was on, occasionally would come over and, we would do war games. It's part of the ship's training, so it's war games. And so you're firing dummy rounds at each other. And, which is entirely fun because the whole point is to try to beat the other team. You know, it's kind of like flag football type of thing going on. But then it was
USS Monitor.
You could get seriously hurt during
Oh, that-
war games because they were firing basically plastic.
That's kind of cool.
If you got caught with it, it was going to do some damage. But it wasn't enough to damage any of the buildings or anything like that. So,
But it was
yeah,
enough.
it was fun.
Yeah, I miss the live fire exercises we used to do.
Yeah.
Get to
I was on board
For the
a
gun
ship
enthusiast.
I was on board one of the battleships when we did some live fire
Oh, really?
exercises with
Oh, no.
oh my god.
Those things had to have been wild.
Yeah, and then you could feel it, the whole ship, beautiful ship.
Yeah, if you're wondering, watching a video of all the Wisconsin when they did a full outside, it shouldn't move like
Sideways.
50 yards.
USS Merrimack, CSS Virginia. The warship Merrimack was a 4,600-ton frigate built at the Boston Navy Yard, and this is the USS Merrimack. Oh, for the record, some of the video might have been cut off, and I didn't realize I wasn't recording. So, if that is indeed the case, I will do a part 2, and I will come back out here and do it all over again. So, just my camera's also almost dead too. So, okay. This the Merrimack was commissioned in February 1856 and spent the next year visiting ports in England, France, and Portugal. In October 1857, after undergoing repairs, the vessel sailed around South America to become the flagship of the Pacific Squadron. In November 1859, the Merrimack returned to the Atlantic coast and entered the Norfolk Navy Yard, where it was decommissioned in February 1860. This ship was still there in April 1861, when the Commonwealth of Virginia decided to secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. Shortly afterward, federal forces from Fort Monroe made an unsuccessful attempt to destroy the Merrimack. Confederate troops captured the yard, salvaged the warship, covered it into a ironclad vessel, and in February 1862 renamed it to the CSS Virginia. The Virginia enrages the Cumberland, March 8, 1862. This print of a Civil War painting by Jonathan E. Franklin depicts the battle between the CSS Virginia and the USS Cumberland. While on board the CSS Patrick Henry, Mr. Franklin witnessed and painted this engagement as it happened. In the background are 5 steamships and a sailing ship. Located on the right is parts of Camp Butler, located on the eastern tip of Newport News, where the James River and Hampton Roads intersect. This is a mallet. Wooden mallets are used to seat fuses into the fuse holes of artillery shells. This mallet is reputed to have been used on the CSS Virginia. The attached tag is inscribed on one side. Virginia, the heart of the nation, and on the other side states 1862 Merrimack, first ironclad Old Dominion.
Okay, so yeah, you know damage
Pass box.
control rating.
A pass box was used to carry powder charges from a magazine to a gun position. This one was used on the USS Cumberland, which was sunk by the Virginia on March 8, 1862. Returned by the Cumberland is stenciled on the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me.
I was actually a Flint Locker blocker.
Yeah, so you know, I left my speedway.
A fireplace.
One day, it was connected.
This here is a roster of the officers and men of the ironclad Merrimack. I'm not going through all of those. Also known as CSS Virginia, from November 1861 to May 1862. To the glory and memory of the officers and crew of the USS Monitor, those who sailed her and fought her, March 9th, 1862. This is a plaque with all of their names. President Lincoln at Fort Monroe. Nearly 2 months after the Battle of the Ironclads, the CSS Virginia was still a factor in General George McClellan's Peninsula Campaign. The presence of this unique warship prevented federal naval supports for McClellan's army, which was bogged down at Yorktown. President Abraham Lincoln decided to make a personal visit to Fort Monroe in an attempt to end this stalemate. Just before dusk on May 5th, 1862, the steamer Miami left Washington carrying Lincoln, Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton, Secretary of the Treasury Salmon P. Chase, and Brigadier General Egbert Vieley. After a rough 25-hour trip, the vessel reached its destination and was boarded by Fort Monroe's commanding officer, Major General John Wool. The entire group then transferred to the USS Minnesota to confer with Commodore Lewis Goldsboro. On the morning of May 7th, Lincoln landed at Old Point Comfort and was escorted to quarters number 1, where he would stay during his visit. After breakfast, the presidential party inspected the USS Monitor, crossed the channel to Fort Calhoun, rode over to the burnt-out town of Hampton, reviewed the troops at Camp Hamilton, and held a long conference back at quarters number 1. Okay, this picture here. During President Lincoln's visit to Fort Monroe, he stayed at quarters 1, where he planned the attack on Norfolk. This drawing originally appeared in the September 30th, 1861 edition of the New York Illustrated News, constructed in 1819. Quarters 1 still remains at Fort Monroe's Casemate Museum's Library and Archives. In this modern painting by Jack Clifford, President Abraham Lincoln is depicted with Secretary of War Edwin M. Stanton, Secretary of the Treasury Salmon P. Chase, Major General John Wool, and an unidentified aide. The next day was spent in strategic sessions and scouting expeditions. It was decided that an invasion force should land at Ocean View and move south to capture Norfolk. The attack began on May 9th and ended a day later with the formal surrender of Norfolk. During this operation, Secretary Stanton ordered that Fort Calhoun be renamed in honor of General Wool. Early in the morning of May 11th, Lincoln was preparing to leave Fort Monroe when he received word that the Confederates had destroyed the Virginia off Craney Island. The president and his party boarded the USS Baltimore for a leisurely trip to Craney Island, then down the Elizabeth River to Norfolk and back to Washington. This watercolor sketch by George Kaiser depicts the loading of troops and supplies for the attack on Norfolk on May 9, 1862. On May 6, 1862, President Abraham Lincoln boarded the steamer Miami in Washington, D.C. for a trip to Fort Monroe. During this voyage, he conferred with Brigadier General Egbert Vale, Secretary of the Treasury Salmon P. Chase, and Secretary of the War Edwin M. Stanton. This image appeared many years after the Civil War ended in an 1878 issue of Scribner's Monthly magazine.
And so, because I had a bit more
situations where I didn't have a choice, she would go to doctor, go to
Israel. So we were at the receiving end.
at least it went someplace.
We were scheduled. My
Person to deal with.
Here's some pictures.
I haven't been for a while.
Paintings.
And detect to
What
make
he
sure
does is he travels all over the country and restores.
Port Royal. Port Royal, South Carolina was the finest natural harbor on the Confederate coast. Its capture would provide the Union Navy with a base for refueling and repair, which was still close enough to maintain the blockade of such important port cities as Wilmington, Charleston, and Savannah. Accordingly, a large amphibious expedition under Brigadier General Thomas W. Sherman
This place.
we went to
This here is Roanoke Island, landing of the Port Royal expedition. These are letters from a soldier in the Roanoke Island campaign. I can't even read that handwriting. Barely, but I can't read cursive anyway. This here is the assault by Hawkins Zouaves on Roanoke Island.
If you like museums like this, the Mariners Museum.
Looks like I can't get over there because they're doing some work. Another fireplace. This here explains what Casemate is a chamber in the wall of a fort for use as a gun position, storage, or even quarters. Siege of Suffolk.
Places like this, there really isn't. I mean, this place is construction.
And we were actually loading the rain here.
So, funny story. I get to Casemate Museum where, well, I'm home now. So, as y'all can tell, because this is the end of my Casemate Museum video. And I've planned on doing a Casemate Museum follow around video for you guys to show you as one of my favorite places. And, well, I walked through half of it only to find out that I'm not recording anything. So, I go back, while my husband's over there chatting with someone, I go back and I'm like, okay, cool, you know, I just go and, start, you know, record, whatever. Got missed, you know, at least a quick one. I'm gonna have to redo my Fort Monroe, my Casemate Museum one at some other time, because my camera battery went dead. So, at any cost, I hope y'all enjoy this preview of Fort Monroe, of Casemate Museum on Fort Monroe. And if you like the video, please feel free to hit like, subscribe, and share, and keep an eye out probably within the next week or two. And I'll have some more follow-arounds, including a full one of Casemate Museum. Thank you for watching. Also, one more thing before I forget. If there's any place out here in Hampton, Hampton, Virginia, that you would like to see, please be sure to let me know. And I will add it to my list. Doesn't matter if we have to pay to do it, or if it's free. If it's something that you've always wanted to see, and never got the opportunity to, or you're making a trip to, you know, Virginia for whatever reason, you know, just let me know, and I will be glad to add it to my list for you.